Get a jump on next summer with Vrbo's early booking deals. Don't wait to claim your dream summer spot, whether that includes a good porch swing or a poolside lounger. When you book early, you get the best places at the best prices. But back to poolside loungers. With Vrbo, you don't have to reserve any loungers. They're all yours. In fact, the whole private home is yours. Book with early booking deals, and you can lounge around all summer long however you please. Book with Vrbo.
A science story, huh?
These NYU scientists,
I
felt
really
right.
I was so
And I just thought, well,
I had figured it out.
it was that golden moment.
Because science was on my side.
Hey everyone, welcome to The Story Clutter, where true, personal stories about science help us discover just how weird, wonderful, and complicated it is to exist in this world and be a human. I'm your host, Misha Gajewski, and today's episode is the final installment in our urban climate change series. Over the past few weeks, we've explored stories connected to the elements that shape our planet, earth, water, and fire, and how those forces show up in places most of us actually live, our cities. Today, we're talking about something that's all around us, all the time, but is surprisingly easy to forget about until something goes wrong. Air. Air is invisible, but it is also essential. Every day we take thousands of breaths without really thinking about it, but the quality of air we breathe has a huge impact on our health, our environment, and the climate itself. In cities especially, air can quickly become polluted by traffic, industry, and the byproducts of the way we build and power our communities. And as climate change intensifies, wildfires, heat waves, and other environmental shifts, the air we depend on can become harder and harder to ignore. In today's episode, both of our storytellers share personal moments when the air around them became impossible to take for granted. Our first story is from activist Virginia Kilgore. Her story is recorded in December 2022 in Dallas, Texas at Wild Detectives. Here's Virginia.
So I was actually born not far from here in the hills of southwest Dallas. When I was 5, we moved a little bit further, a couple miles further, and I spent my youth playing in the creek, and we kept bees, and we all worked kind of outside in the garden. And then when I was in high school, I went with my father to the country. We worked a lot in the country, in the hill country. So we were coming back from the hill country one day, and it was Sunday night, and I could see like a big glow on the horizon. It was like there was a fire or something. So we were in the country coming back to Dallas, and we were like an hour away, 45 minutes away. And the closer that I got to this kind of glow, the more I thought, what the heck is that? And then when we got closer, I saw, oh my goodness, that's a big factory. That's a lot of lights. And so when we were right at the foot of this factory, we could see this, like, just spotlights, this, all over the shininess of this factory, and it was all over the highway, and it was like as bright as the morning sun, ridiculous amount of lights. But it was also kind of illuminating this kind of heavy smoke that was actually falling out of the smokestack. Smokestacks are generally really tall so that the wind will kind of carry them away. But in this case, they just like came out and then fell down and hit the ground. And it was blowing across the highway. So we were, going into this cloud of smoke behind all the cars that were in front of us. And after we got in there, it didn't take very long before we started choking. And so whatever was this smoke that was crossing the highway had gotten into the cab of the truck. And so I turned the air conditioner off, and I rolled up the windows, and I was just kind of glued to the window looking out at this horrific amount of whatever it was that was surrounding the truck and in the cab of the truck with us. And I tried to look at people to see the people that we were passing on the road, to look at their faces. I couldn't see any faces, but I followed the smoke, and it, crossed the highway, and I saw a field of cows there, and they were standing behind the fence, And I was thinking, oh my goodness, I'm choking. I can't breathe. What's going on with these guys? I was horrified. It was a very painful situation. So when I got home, I called 911, and I was like, there is a factory melting south of town. It's made me very sick. There's cows out there. This can't be a good thing. And they were like, lady, calm down. It's okay. They're permitted to do this. We've gotten a lot of calls about this, but unfortunately, it's a Sunday night, and we can't help you. So I was like, wow, that's heavy. I mean, what about the people that live there, right? So then the next day, I decided to call the newspaper and find out exactly what was going on and how I could get involved to stop this, because it's because it went on, and every time we came by there, not every time, but many times that we drove by there, we'd get the same kind of effect. This gas would make us sick. We'd get home, we'd be sick. What's going on here? So I called the newspaper, and I asked them what was going on and how can we get involved to stop it, for goodness sakes. So they gave me the number of several groups that had been meeting about this, and were just specifically, one group was just specifically working on this particular issue because it was making people sick and causing record amounts of asthma, and this part of town, a little bit further southwest than here. And so about that time, my mom started to develop asthma, and I was just like fresh out of high school. So she started to develop asthma, and I just called her a little while ago, and she did an inhaler. She has strapped this thing to her face and do these vasobronchiodilators every day to breathe, and this was the origin of her asthma, and this was 30 years ago. So it's still kind of going on. So with this group, we had meetings every month, and we focused on the permitting of this company. And of course, that's a really boring subject. So we'd dress up in costumes that looked like smokestacks, and we'd go out and do street theater. And we did all kinds of programs for cable television. That's when you still had the kind of things that weren't more digital. They called them analog, and you had to actually cut and paste your film when you were making it. So we'd send that out on cable television just to try to bring it creatively and not be such a wet cloth about, oh my God, what a boring story, or polluted air. So we did all kinds of stuff. During that time, I was invited to go to Mexico and speak to a large symposium of professors from Mexico, Central America, and South America to talk about the adverse effects of dioxins, incinerating dioxins. So we really got into the permitting process of how can this happen? How can they be doing this? It's obviously making so many people sick. So the permitting process was a failure. We spent like 10 years fighting this permit. We finally went to court with all the other environmental groups in Texas because everybody thought this was a terrible scene. And we took them to court to fight their permit. It ended up being the longest and most expensive court case. It was called a contested permit hearing. It was the longest and most expensive one in Texas history ever. So after that, I was personally, because of my mom, because of our reaction, because of the kids, because of the cows, because of everybody that lives here, very much like emotionally and physically involved. And then I had 10 years invested in this permitting process. So I decided I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to do something. So I thought, well, what am I going to do? And then I thought, I was so inspired by Gandhi when I was in high school about this, his whole fasting to make change in the world. So I decided I'm going to do a hunger strike. Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's, I was very involved in this, and I thought, well, what's the biggest thing that I could offer? And it's my life. So I thought, well, yeah, I have my life to offer. This is making a lot of people sick. Maybe I can change the scene. So it took me about a year to get a permit to hunger strike, because there are no permits for hunger strikes in Austin. I wanted to go right to the Capitol steps and front stage, do a hunger strike, right? Gandhi did it. So I was out there. It was every day I'd go and I'd talk to the representatives and the state senators, and I'd tell them about my problem and our issue, and I'd talk about the cows and the people and the kids and people living in their house getting gassed and me driving by getting gassed. And so that, didn't really get the attention of the particular person that I was aiming to get the attention of. And that was a very kind of prominent politician at the time. And I just felt that guy can help me change the situation, that I can talk to him, he's going to understand this, we're going to change the situation. So anyway, I was not getting his attention at all. I was out there for a week went by, I was getting really dizzy in a week, and everybody was, like, lady, you need to go to the nurse and find out what's going on with you. And well, of course, everybody knew what was going on with me. So what I did is I thought, what is going to make me where's the common ground here between me and these legislators and common denominator. So I was looking for a common denominator, what's going to endear me to them. And I thought, my letter jacket. So in high school, I lettered, and I had a letter jacket, of course. It was a letter jacket and all kinds of patches, and it was ridiculous. I never wore it. So it was new. It wasn't my style. I was a punk rocker, and I was a jock and a debater, but I was definitely not wearing my letter jacket. So this was the first time I'd ever worn it. I was out there on the south steps of the state capitol during legislative session and talking to everybody that would walk by and look at my poster and listen to me and ramble on about my issue, and kind of a little tired because I hadn't eaten in a long time. But So they sent me in. They were observing the shutdown of my kidneys, and they were definitely focused on my kidneys because that's a cheap test. And they would tell me, lady, your kidneys are shutting down. You could die from this, and if you don't stop, Well, anyway, even if you do stop, the minute that you pass out, we're going to be down here. We're going to restrain you. We're going to detain you. And we're going to force feed IV you back to health. So you're not taking anything with you except for these days. So, but the letter jacket paid off because the particular politician that I had been kind of provoking, just by being there on his front steps, he noticed me and he said, oh my goodness, that's a high school. I know that high school. And he came up and he was like, oh, you're from that high school. Wow, that's a lot of patches. And wow, cool. And then he started listening to my story, whereas, he wasn't listening before, but he was listening now. So I told him about the issue, pointing to my poster to illustrate the problem. And he was like, lady, you're all alone. There's nobody here with you. You're like, if you were 10,000 people, I might be able to help you, but you are all alone. So thank you, but no. So what happened after that is that he kept talking to me. He'd come up to me and we'd talk, and I didn't even have to run after him. And he'd came and, he'd come and evaluate, I guess, my mental state or something. And so what he did is he encouraged me. He told me that he was proud of me. Darn that I was alone, but he was proud of me. And he gave me some really good advice that actually took years to understand. But we talked 9 times in total, including that first time. I did a 17-day hunger strike. And in one of our last conversations, and this is when it was getting down to the wire, they were really worried, and I had a lot of press coverage because they thought I was going to fall dead any moment. He said, if you really want to affect environmental quality and do any kind of changing at all, you need to work with those big polluting businesses. you could do all the protesting you want, lady, but you need to get it together and work with these businesses and present solutions to these huge problems, because they don't know. We're all just trying to get a piece of the pie, and they're, incinerating this terrible stuff because they're saving money and getting paid to incinerate the waste and selling their product and making a living for a lot of people working in this area. And that's what you need to do. You need to get together with these businesses where they're just in the planning stages of whatever permit process they're going to go through, or even the construction of the factory. So it took years for me to understand this. I actually was already involved in like daily meditations for years before I could evolve to fit my head around this, because it seemed like it was the opposite of what I was. I felt like I'm an us. We're an us. We're getting poisoned by them. And to come to the realization that that I want to be a them, and how am I going to rearrange that in my own life to be a them and work with them to save us? Well, that didn't fit through my door. So I did after all this meditation realize that is the answer, that's got to be the answer, is to work together to find a solution to help us all through this environmental crisis, and to come to the table and to be active and proactive in presenting solutions where there are otherwise no solutions. So today, and this is spanning over a 30-year period of time, today I present to you and to everybody, to myself, and to big businesses, ideas on how to recycle organic waste and inoculate them with microorganisms so that they eat trash, because they're born onto organic waste. There's a lot of energy in that, the good stuff. And then when we wean them onto the contamination, it breaks the contamination down. So we're actually eliminating two huge problems at the same time. So in this way, and in other ways, and whatever ways we can think of to present solutions, I believe that even though we all feel differently, and it is kind of an us and them if you think about it, but if you don't think about it, from about 100 feet that way, we are all the same. We live on the same ship. We want the same things, or very similar things to each other. And we definitely can learn how to work better together and be better stewards of our environment. Thank you.
I have to applaud Virginia for being so dedicated and passionate about our planet. I get hangry after missing one single meal. And if you'd like to learn more about Virginia, head over to our website, storyclatter.org. Not everyone feels comfortable stepping up to the mic, and that's totally okay. There's another way to make Story Clatter happen, by becoming a donor. Right now, more than ever, stories like Virginia's and the others you've heard in this series need to be heard. At Story Clatter, we know that personal stories can break through the noise, connect people to the human side of science, and make complex ideas feel real. But keeping these stories alive and accessible takes support. Our donors make this possible. They help us produce the podcast, share stories that might otherwise go unheard, and spark conversations that stick with you long after the episode ends. If you believe in the power of science storytelling, consider making a donation at storyclatter.org/donate. Most people give $10 a month, but every tax-deductible gift, big or small, helps keep the mics on and the stories coming. Thank you for helping make sure these stories are heard. When I was in my 20s, I thought all the older people in my life were joking when they told me how even a couple of drinks was too much. But then I hit my 30s and realized it very much was not a joke. Like, I'm not talking about going out hard. I mean, I'll have a totally reasonable night, maybe meet some friends, have a drink or two, get home at a decent hour, and then somehow I still wake up feeling groggy, unfocused, like your brain didn't fully reboot overnight. Which is why I tried Cheers Restore from Cheers Health. And I'll be honest, I was skeptical, but the difference the next morning was noticeable. Like, I actually slept well, I woke up clear-headed, I didn't have that low-grade ugh feeling hanging over the day. The way it works is kind of interesting because the problem isn't just dehydration. When alcohol leaves your system, your brain kind of rebounds, which is what makes you feel bad. The DHM in Cheers helps smooth that out while you sleep, and the cysteine helps your liver break down the toxic byproducts of alcohol more efficiently. So, instead of waking up feeling like garbage, you wake up feeling pretty normal. They've sold over 50 million doses, they're backed by doctors and PhDs, so take Cheers Restore after your last drink or before going to bed and wake up feeling at least 50% better or your money back. For a limited time, our listeners are getting 20% off their entire order by using code Collider at cheershealth.com. Just head to cheershealth.com and use Collider for 20% off. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Our next story is from Sai Krishna Dammalapati. Sai is a civic technologist and storyteller. His story was recorded last year at his home in Hyderabad, India. Here's Sai.
So it all started when I graduated. I think I was only good at math and statistics. Those were the subjects I was doing well. And I was looking out for companies where I can actually employ these skills. But I was also finding those companies where I can get to solve public problems. I don't even know why. This entire sector of data for good, etc. was new to me. But it was a process of negation where I was not happy with companies where I was using these skills to sell a credit card or something. I was looking forward to work on public problems. So I read a newspaper article about how my city government selected 10 startups to tackle various public challenges. These civic tech startups were working on areas like waste management and data-driven governance. I emailed each of them expressing my interest. One of those startups, called Lakir Foundation, saw me fitting in their culture. My career started then. Over the next 3 years, I learned data applications to public issues. I mapped flood-prone areas of a city, worked on making public transport more inclusive, researched on economic and urban policy, wrote data stories on regional media on the spread of COVID-19, etc. I started to call myself a civic technologist. There were few places in India where civic technology industry did well. Bengaluru, Pune and Delhi, the national capital of India, had most of the opportunities. To my surprise, I got a job working with the Delhi government, working on its most important problem, air pollution. I was very excited. War on air pollution was a project I got staffed on by a consulting firm called GDI Partners. Delhi is one of the most polluted cities in the world. Solutions like air purifiers treat the symptoms, but only governments can address the root causes at scale. I worked for the Green War Room, a command center coordinating efforts across civic authorities responsible for keeping Delhi's air clean. These agencies reported daily on their efforts. My job was to automate the generation of insights from their reports, helping the war room identify and address inefficiencies. I felt this is it. I was elated that I got to use my statistical wand on one of the most important public problems in the country. I was proud that I found this use case of my skills. I did not limit myself to being a data guy who codes. I bristle when someone calls me a techie. I cherish more about the domains I work. So I immersed myself in the study of air pollution as I worked at the Green War Room. When a civic agency reported open waste burning, I studied how waste management impacts air quality. When another agency reported on construction debris, I dug into that as well. Variable by variable, I built up my domain knowledge about air quality, the science, the policy, and the politics of it. I became the person who checked the AQI, the air quality index, before stepping out and started to carry a mask. I wondered why very few residents of Delhi are not doing the same. Maybe I just ingrained these habits as I worked on the problem. But then disappointments started creeping in. Firstly, health. No matter the amount of precautions I took from air pollution, I started feeling its impacts. An AQI below 50 is considered safe. It had crossed 300. My eyes used to turn red as I cycled to the office, not from exhaustion, but from pollution. I felt irritated. Some people even laughed at my mask wearing and the concern. They said they got habituated to pollution. I hope evolution works so fast. The air, which we had once learned in school was invisible, had started becoming visible to me in its most polluted form. I learned that living in Delhi could cut 7.7 years of my life and leave me with a bunch of respiratory diseases. Every breath came with anxiety. I felt guilty for prioritizing my health over my work. That's a toxic work ethic to have. I also had romanticized the sector a lot. That with my mind of statistics and technology, I thought I would bring a great change in the society. That illusion started to fade away. There was superficiality and mediocrity in the bureaucracy and the development sector. Best solutions were not getting implemented for absurd reasons. There was grand talk about sustainable development goals and other such buzzwords. They were freely thrown around, but there was very less real work done on ground. For instance, the government planned to construct smog towers in its war against air pollution. The tower, whose impact is limited to 50-meter radius. There was next to zero knowledge and reason that supports such a decision. Yet, a smog tower could catch a lot of media attention and everything. Including my work, everything got reduced to that. Optics. My mentor suggested that I actually focus on doing what I can do best to create greater impact instead of chasing this optics of impact. I left Delhi. The stint lasted for less than a year. I doubted myself if I was taking decisions too quick, but I had to decide. I couldn't withstand the stagnancy and mediocrity crowding around me. I left Delhi, but not the dream of solving public problems. I found a remote job at Civic Data Lab that let me continue similar work. I continued working on air quality at urbanemissions.info. This time, there were no illusions. There was no romanticization. My work was in building datasets and knowledge on various public problems, disaster management, child labor, air pollution, etc. I hope that one day politics will enable action on these issues. And on that day, this data and knowledge will help cities be prepared to act. I continue to work with that hope. I returned to Delhi for a short trip to attend a conference. From the moment my flight landed, I was masked up. The AQI had crossed 300 again. My eyes were turning red again. I saw the Indian national flag fluttering at the airport against the backdrop of a fuming air. The conference was about how open data can solve public issues. It covered many of India's public issues: urbanization, disaster management, judiciary, and air pollution. It had participants from all over the world. There were bureaucrats, representatives of international organizations like the UN, professors, activists, philanthropists, journalists, and data scientists like me in the conference. They discussed many solutions from their countries, but the most common, fitting the theme of the conference, was open data. The idea was that if we had more data about these problems, we could solve them. The idea which gave my work some meaning and purpose for the previous 2 years. We have all the data on how bad the air quality is in Delhi. There is general awareness of the health consequences of air pollution. So why is there no action? That was a question from the audience. I turned to see who asked it. She's an elderly woman who I later learned runs a couple of think tanks in India. No one has a proper answer to that question. Platitudes about open data are thrown around as responses. They don't satisfy me. I'm sure they don't satisfy her either. I kept thinking, why is there no action? I want an answer to that question. How can I justify my work if I cannot? Will I just keep opening datasets while no action is taken on them? Forget government action for a moment, which often gets bogged down by bureaucracy. I wonder about something simpler. Why are not people wearing masks, even when they know they are breathing poison? I have no answer. Now, after the session, looked for the woman who triggered this existential crisis in me. I needed to hear her thoughts. When will there be action? I asked her. She told me about a photograph of a 3-year-old Syrian boy lying face down on a beach. The moment she mentioned it, I recalled it. No, it was not just the image. I remember the entire context of the Syrian crisis. That conversation sent me down a rabbit hole. I discovered a book called Descartes' Error, Emotion, Reason, and the Human Brain. It argues that decision-making is governed by emotion. A robot, even an LLM model, can process all the data and logic, but it has to feel something to make a decision. And that, I realized, is an answer to the question, why is there no action? There is no action because there is no feeling. You have to feel to act. The photograph of the Syrian boy made the world feel compassion. I felt fear about pollution, and that made me mask up and leave Delhi. For me, they were just numbers and reports. It was personal. Fear. The decision makers responsible for our air, they're not feeling it yet. I just have to evoke that emotion in them to make them feel it and take action upon it. And I felt art does that job beautifully. So on the flight back from Delhi, for the first time in my adult life, I wondered, could I be an artist? I couldn't even draw a straight line. I rarely read fiction. I don't know if it was the turbulence in the flight, but that very thought felt tremulous. Regardless, I could not undream a dream, so I decided to live it.
That was Sai, and if you'd like to learn more about him, visit our website storycollider.org. I also think Sai's story is a fitting note to end this series on. People will only care about climate change when it's personal, when it matters to them. And stories like this help show that human side to the headlines. If you'd like to hear more science stories, you can always head to our website or follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. Head to storycollider.org to become a financial supporter. If you're interested in coming to one of our shows, starting a Story Collider show in your own community, or even learning how to tell your own science story, that's all on our website too. And if you enjoy this podcast, tell a friend. Share an episode, introduce someone to Story Collider, and help bring more people into the world of science storytelling. This podcast is produced by me, Misha Gajewski, along with John Chen, Nikisha Roberts-Washington, and Aaron Barker. The stories featured in today's episode were produced by Hoda Imam, Devin Kodjis, and me. Special thanks goes out to the Story Collider's board and team. Our theme music is by Ghost, and next week we'll be back with 2 delightful stories, all about literal and metaphorical shields. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Until next time, thanks so much for listening. Summer is right around the corner, which means it's officially time to start thinking about summer vacations and travel. Where you're going, how you're getting there, and how much it's all going to cost. Or, better yet, how much you can not spend. That's why you should check out All the Hacks. Hosted by Chris Hutchins, the show is all about smarter ways to upgrade your life, money, and travel without blowing your budget. And if you've been curious about travel hacking but didn't know where to start, there's a recent episode you have to hear. Chris goes through his process for booking travel with points and miles, and he breaks down his simple, repeatable system for turning your points into way better travel experiences. He walks you through how to plan trips, find award availability, choose the right tools, and even when it makes more sense to use points versus paying cash. It's super practical, surprisingly approachable, and honestly, kind of a game changer if you're planning any trips this summer. So, search for All the Hacks. That's All the Hacks in your podcast app, hit follow, and start upgrading your life today.